Good evening, fellow viewers. Welcome back to the breathless countdown of my top 64 albums. I think we're on 35, 35 through 31. And we've not had a Beatles album yet, and therefore I'm going to put that right straight away. Number 35, the first and last Beatles album, and I guess you're going to expect Sergeant Pepper or Let It Be or something like that. Abbey Road maybe. My first recollection of the Beatles was with my mum and dad listening to the radio. I don't know, it would be 1964, 5, 6, that sort of time, when every song that came out the Beatles released as a single was absolutely fantastic, miles ahead of anybody else. And yeah, you would argue for the Beatles best group of all time. Strange thing is though that I think I liken the Beatles to a box of chocolates. I liken them to, somebody offers you Beatles as a box of chocolate, you think, oh, thanks very much, and you take one. You look at the selection, you think, yeah, that'd be fantastic, and it is. And if they say, do you want another one? Yeah, fantastic, I'll have another one. And that's a bit like all the stuff from the Beatles. I can't think of many bad tracks. Now, does that make for a great album? I'm not sure it does. You see, other groups were a bit like, instead of box chocolates, other groups were a bit like poached salmon. You've got to pick your time. You've got to really want to eat it. You've got to, can I have a knife with this? Can I get it on a plate, please? So this is a bit like Zappa or Yes or Nirvana or I don't know. Corner shop. You really got to want to like this group and get into it. Even people like Fountains of Wayne or people like that. You can't say every song that they've ever released is fantastic. Foo Fighters probably come into the same category. Beatles, yeah. So when it comes to albums, I don't particularly think they've released the best album ever. I never got into Sergeant Pepper. I have recently sort of got all these albums and thought, yeah, absolutely fantastic music. But for me, the only one that sort of bridges a gap between the old stuff and the new stuff is this thing here. This album called Revolver. There's a bit of old, bit of new. And just when they were giving up going on the road and singing pop songs and stuff that everybody liked, and just before they were really getting into the sort of heavily produced, that's all we're doing now, we're not ever going to tour again type, reversal of sound. It's got a bit of both on it. It's got a bit of everything for most people. This, I think, yeah, mine's in mono, so it's not quite grabbing the special effects, but it comes over really strongly. My standout track on this, well, I'm going to go either Taxman or Eleanor Rigby. It starts off Taxman and then Eleanor Rigby, but I think the sort of memories I have of the 60s with the Beatles, I'm going to go for Eleanor Rigby. What a fabulously crafted song. McCartney at his best. Absolutely beautiful. Strings don't get in the way. They add to the thing, and George Martin really added to the sort of Beatles canon by what they call the fifth Beatle. So that's going to be my only Beatles album. So you might think, well, I'm turning this off right now. Other people say, yeah, fantastic, Beatles overrated. So we're not going to go there. So 1966, prime of the Beatles in my modest opinion, and that would be my Beatles album. So we're now going to fly forward. Yes, we are. Where are we? Yeah, we're going to fly forward to 2003. My brother's to blame for this. 2003 got me into a band by buying me in about 2005-6 their latest album. So I'll reveal who it is in a second. They're from Akron, Ohio. So if that narrows it down to you, for you might be thinking, oh, well, Chrissie Hynde from Akron, Ohio. Like Pretenders, that's good. Devo from Akron, Ohio. So that would be even better band. Devo loved their stuff in the early 70s, in the late 70s, early 80s, I think that was. I can't think of Jack Nicklaus. No, Columbus, Ohio. So don't get me into that. Might do top 64 golfers, but probably not. This band, in fact, their next album after this one is called Rubber Factory. So if you haven't got it before, you've got it now. This is a band called the Black Keys. all the way from Akron, Ohio. Two-piece band, so a bit like the White Stripes, and they actually competed, I think, with most people, in most people's minds, in and around the early 2000s. Black Keys, White Stripes, you can see how the thing would go there. Two-piece band, so you got guitarists, a phenomenal guitarist, and an amazing drummer. So again, a bit like the White Stripes. And that, well, I think they call it lo-fi sound. This was lo-fi because it was recorded on 8-track stereo in Patrick Carney's garage. 14 hours for this album. Sort of almost one take, 14 hours to create the album. And they went on to do more. They produced Rubber Factory, because Akron, Ohio is the American center of the rubber industry. I don't know if you knew that there. So I think there's a Goodchild and Goodyear, the two big rubber factories from there. And then went on to do Magic Potion and Brothers and a lot of more popular albums. They really struggled in the early days, and that's what I like about these guys. I think there's a second or third album, and they really struggled to get off the ground. They turned down a lucrative deal to get one of their songs, onto an advert very early on, and they eventually succumbed with my standout track, which is Set You Free on this album. And I think certainly in the States it's a Nissan commercial, so I think they got 200 grand from that, and in fact quite got into the mood of giving away their songs as lending them to adverts and films and movie soundtracks and that sort of thing. But so if you don't know the Black Keys, you must by now, but if you don't know the Black Keys early stuff, I suggest Rubber Factory or Thick Freakness, which is this album, and go back to here. The weird thing on here, by the way, if you're not into hair products of any kind, is pomade or pomade. I think it's pomade, and it's a hair thickener. So they've actually taken out the name of the product and the type of product as well at the bottom, and superimpose that thing. I'm not sure you can do that anymore without copyright problems, but sort of band they are. So Black Keys, Thick Freakness, 2003, a standout track for me, Set You Free. Right, we've talked about this guy as well so far. We talked about him early on when we were talking about Beck, Bogart and Apiche. I talked about him last week when I was talking about Rod Stewart, and the guy, as you may guess from that, is a guy called Jeff Beck. So album called Blow by Blow. There's a back of it. See a bit more Jeff Beck. Most people who play guitar and know guitarists would probably put him in the top 10. And I think it's a bit of a checkered career. Big problem with releasing Hi Ho Silver Lining, or Hi Ho Sheffield Wednesday as we call it around our neck of the woods, and that was never going to be representative of Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck's a blues player, so he played with backed Rod Stewart in the Jeff Beck group, and played with Beck, Bogart and Apiche, and then was session musician for a lot of musicians. Now, one of the artist he was session musician to, if that's the right word, is Stevie Wonder. And one day, most people had gone for lunch or whatever it was. The story goes that Jeff Beck liked to play drums, so in the sort of lunch break, he was on the drums just rapping out some rhythm. In walks Stevie Wonder and said, "Don't stop, I like that," and then accompanied him on a sort of staccato piano piece. So I really like this. Let's keep this going. That song turned out to be Superstition, which Stevie Wonder said, "Well, you can have that. You can have that. We've put that together between us. You can have that for your album." And it's actually on one of Jeff Beck's albums. Actually on a Stevie Ray Vaughan album as well, version of Superstition. So you can see how highly it's rated. So that was cut and dried. Apart from the record company, whether it was with Motown, I think he still was with Motown, Stevie Wonder. They said, no way, you're not giving that away. That's one of your belters. That's a cracker. So you're going out under the name of Stevie Wonder. You're going to release Superstition. Now, why has that got anything to do with this album? Is that Stevie Wonder then felt bad about that and wrote for Jeff Beck a song which is my standout track on this album, and it's called "'Cause We've Ended as Lovers." And it's a beautiful sort of weepy guitar, strung out guitar piece. Not quite sure whether Stevie Wonder wrote it with a guitar or on a piano or whatever, but gave that to Jeff Beck, "'Cause We've Ended as Lovers." So fantastic track, absolutely great album, full of great guitar work, a lot of instrumental work on here as well. It's called Blow by Blow, and it's from, I think, 1975. Yeah, 1975. Yeah, good album if you like that sort of music. There's two or three artists on this countdown that have got 3 albums. In fact, one's got 4, I think. But yeah, 3 was my limit for most bands. And here we have a second, I think, of the Dylan albums that I'm going to talk about. And this one is 1974. Yeah, 1974. It's called Blood on the Tracks, and it's put together as the greatest breakup album to end all breakup albums. And it was written, well, most people say because of the breakup of him and his wife Sarah, who he wrote 2 or 3 songs about. He says not. He says no. It's not about me. It's it's inspired by Anton Chekhov, I think, and all the songs are to do with him rather than Dylan. But most people disagree with that. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So again, to me, not miserable. A little bit sort of vitriolic in places, but again, the lyrics are what makes Dylan rather than music, in my opinion. But there are some up-tempo numbers. There are some really complex lyrics in here. So I think that's one of my favourites. The start of this album it's got Tangled Up in Blue, which is one of Dylan's most famous tracks, and then it goes Simple Twist of Fate, which is things happen differently to the way you thought they were going to go, but just because something changes, you change, it changes, the world changes, and I think that's so real for these times we're going through at the moment. If only this would have stayed like that, but it didn't. Everything changes. You've got to deal with it. But my standout track, my favourite track on here, probably one of my favourite Dylan tracks of all time, is called Lily, Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts. I'll say that again: Lily, Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts. It's a 9-minute sort of gallows cabaret. It's a weird song. It just goes verse after verse, about 15 or 16 verses. It builds and builds, and it's really about a weird heist that takes place with all these characters involved. So fantastic album, well produced, well put together, and you can listen to it 1,000 times and not get bored with such as the sort of depth of this stuff, which is true of a lot of Dylan's albums. So Blood on the Tracks, 1974, which leaves us one more. Number 31, I think, 1973. This guy starts as a folk singer. I'm going to put this up straight away and celebrate the fact that this guy, well, I think it's his best album by far. So John Martin started in the late 60s, I'm pretty sure, as a folk singer, so out and out folk troubadour type. He's not, well, he's Scottish, but he was born in Malden in Surrey or something like that. But you may have heard me say in the first run of this, I like people who drawl. Well, this guy drawls. He doesn't sing. He almost sounds like he's drunk when he's singing, which I don't know, but I seem to like that. I seem to get drawn to this. And I didn't know anything about John Martin. Since tracked a lot of his sort of history down and looked at some of his other albums, and only really when I was alerted to John Martin when I was in a taxi in 1980. I was in a cab and going on a fairly long journey. I don't know what it's to do with, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And the guy had a radio on or cassette, I don't know what it was, Taxi Driver. And we just listened to Eric Clapton's Lay Down Sally, which I'd not even heard anyway before, and I thought that was marvellous. And on comes my standout track from this. It's called May You Never. And if you've never heard May You Never, it was released as a single at the time, 1972, I think. This is 1973. So, but just before this album was released, we got May You Never. Absolutely marvellous track. And I said, who is this? I know that the previous one was Clapton. Who's this? He said, John Martin. You must have heard of him. I said, I've never heard of him. But since then, I went and found out who he is. Fantastic album. Fantastic performer. Died, I think, 2009. So it's a bit sad at the end how he sort of was misunderstood. I think got the bit of the demons, a bit like Peter Green. And he wrote this album dedicated to certainly the title track "Solid Air" to Nick Drake, who again was mixed up in a head about being able to perform, and very very quiet guy, and you know troubled, maybe the word. And it's interesting that he's not going to. He said, "I'm not going to explain what solid air means," but Nick Drake certainly had solid air. So I see from that the guy had impenetrable issues in his mind, and it was said of Peter Green that he said, I feel I had bricks in my head. I feel I couldn't think properly because I had bricks in my head," and almost like this similar sort of feel to what was going on with Nick Drake. So that's John Mayall, tribute song to Nick Drake, two of my favourite performers, and that's not the title track, but the standout track, "May You Never." So well worth a listen. Okay, so we're nearing the top 30. That was number 31. And if you enjoy this, or you want to put up some other albums, please put them down below. Be great if you went and had a listen to any of these if you've not yet got into it. Other than that, I'll see you middle of the week coming up. Okay, bye for now.